We're getting into the business end too of the Olympic Games in Paris. And indeed, of course, today, both boxers at the centre of that gender row are into their prospective weight class finals with the chance of winning Olympic gold tonight. But we'll get more specifically to that in a moment. On a general basis, many have passed comment at some of the judging and scoring that we have witnessed in the world of boxing at the Olympics in Paris this time around. I'm delighted to say, Simon, that former World, European and Commonwealth champion and Olympic bronze medalist Mick Conlan joins us live in the show. Michael, good afternoon to you. How do we find you?
Afternoon, Jim. I'm just sitting here on the way back to Belfast from Dublin, so all is good, mate.
Good to see you. For those watching on YouTube and Facebook, you'll recognise Michael right away. So let's get to it. I mean, I know you've been quite outspoken about some of the judging that we've witnessed at this year's Olympics. I think you've called it almost shambolic. Is it that bad, mate?
Yeah, I think it's been terrible. I think, with boxing kind of on the cusp of being thrown out of the Olympics, the decisions in this games is probably a nail in the coffin for it. And I think it's kind of done purposely in a sense that let's get rid of boxing from the games. And it has been embarrassing. Some of the decisions have been absolutely terrible, especially towards French fighters getting the decisions. It's been real bad.
I mean, does it in any way relate to your experience back in the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio? You were eliminated by a controversial call, and you reacted by raising your middle finger at the judges at the time. Does it go back to that?
Yeah. It does, and I wish some people would have done it. You know what I mean? When you're a bit more outspoken about it, it gets highlighted more. And I thought when I had done it, that would kind of stop it for the future, but it hasn't. Tokyo it did, but this Olympics has been just as bad.
Have you witnessed some scoring or some judging, Simon, that has raised an eyebrow from your point of view?
I mean, you witness it both in the professional ranks and you witness it in the amateur ranks. And obviously one of the things that was contentious was the corruption that was involved in recent Olympics around the scoring and the betting syndicates that were around this, and that was meant to be cleared up. But everybody that you talk to, and we had this conversation yesterday with Spencer, Oliver, Michael, and with Carl Frampton, who are in the same place as you, and believe emphatically that a couple of the fighters that we were hoping to medal in this Olympic Games have been pretty much cheated out of that opportunity. But is there any difference? I mean, there was a clean house exercise. There is a different governance over the refereeing and the scoring in this games, yet still the same situations are manifesting themselves. Is it do you believe corruption, or do you just believe that there's an element of incompetence here?
You said it there, Simon. It's incompetence, in my opinion. The judging towards home fighters has been very favourable, and it's sad to see. We're at the Olympic Games. People train their whole lives to get to the Olympic Games, and to have it kind of ripped away from them with corruption is terrible. And it happens time and time again. But you think with a clean kind of new house in terms of the judging setup, it would change. But in my opinion, since Tokyo, it's got worse.
I mean, the IOC would deny that there's any corruption involved, Mick. You and I both know that. Today, we come to this gender row, which has been simmering under the surface, to say the least, throughout the Olympics. And now the two fighters involved in that, Mick, Lee Yun-ting, and the other fighter who comes from Algeria, Khalif, they get their chance today, in separate fights, of course, it must be said, to win gold medals. And last year, both fighters were banned from the World Championships by the Russian-led governing body, the IBA, after failing a gender test. What's your take on all of this? Where do you stand on this, mate?
I think it's very unfair to comment because nobody knows the truth, really, except the IBA or whoever have done these tests. But there's no proof, and like this girl, from my opinion, is a girl because her whole country said where you'd be banned in her country, you'd be murdered in her country if you were transgender. So, I think it's terrible. I think the public kind of shame on them is really bad because it could affect their mental health very badly in the future. But until we know the actual facts of if it's a man, if it's a woman, XY chromosomes, with all this stuff, we can't really comment. I think it's very unfair to comment until there's actual proof of what it is. Women's boxing is very, very new, still a baby in a sense. So we have never came across something like this, and maybe it's because it is so new.
Well, yesterday on this show, and Simon mentioned him a moment ago, mate, Carl Frampton, fellow countryman of yours, spoke about this and spoke about Khalif. Have a listen.
At this minute, when there hasn't been any tests, I think it's been a bit of a hatchet job on the girl, and I genuinely feel very, very sorry for her. Look, men fighting against women should never happen. That should not be allowed, and I'm not trying to defend that at all, but I just think there's been a bit of a hatchet job here. And you look at the the Italian fighter, Carini, who pulled out. I think she spewed it. I think she maybe tried to make a bit of a point. Khalifi has also lost to numerous women before. It's not as if she's just going and bulldozing all these other women. And if you look at Karini's performance against the Turkish boxer, I think in the World Championships, she spewed it and faked an ankle injury, I think, a number of years ago. So I think there's a lot more to it. I still don't think people have enough evidence to say she cannot box yet, but I think there needs to be a lot more clarification and a lot more digging into this to figure it out. And yeah, that's where I am at the minute. I don't think people know enough yet.
Mick, that was Carl Frampton. I think it's fair to say, Mick, that it shows boxing up in a bad light. We don't want to be talking about your sport, Mick, in the fashion in which we are doing so, because it does nothing for the sport, does it?
No, definitely not. And I'm singing off to see him cheat his Carl here, because that's straight facts what he's saying. Like, the girl lost to an Irish girl already, and Amy Broadhurst, previously in a World Championship. So it's not like she's just going and destroying people. If she has more testosterone, maybe that needs to be looked into. Why? Has there been any doping or anything? Who knows? Nobody knows. So we need to get clarification on why this has all been kind of brought up and the way it's going. But there's no proof. There's no clarification yet. So I think it's very unfair to comment.
Mick, it begs the question, while we've got you on, what is next for you? Because it's fair to say, in the ring, it hasn't been going as well as you would have wanted it to in recent times. You've been at the very top. You're a former World, European, Commonwealth champion. Do you crack on? What's next for Michael Conlan?
100%, Jim. I'll crack on. I'll be back. You know, the last year has been a kind of a very bad year in my life outside of the ring, and I think that's played into a lot of, you know, when I look at my performances in hindsight, you go, maybe I shouldn't have done this, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But, you know, for in terms of a personal stance in life, I had a bad year, probably the worst year of my life. So, you know, now we're back on track. Now I'm starting to kind of fend the coach and get back into things, but I'll be back 100%.
We want to see him back.
Oh, absolutely.
Simon. This boy can fight.
The margins in the Lee Wood fight were so marginal. And it will have had an impact upon Michael. He knows it. Obviously, he went on to win fights there on afterwards, but I wouldn't have expected him to have lost to Jordan Gill. He did, but he will explain himself. If there's other things going in besides in the background that have affected his performances in the ring, you know, he's one of those fighters that people want to see because he's an all-action fighter. He's very brave, and he brings it. And so I hope that we do see him back in the ring at the level that he was at. When he was, you know, competing and attempting to win a world strap.
And of course, next month, Mick, before you leave us, it's going to be dominated by all the talk of the Wembley fight here as Daniel Dubois goes for it against AJ. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's a great fight. I think, you know, Dubois can ask questions of AJ at the start, but I think AJ pairing it with Ben Davison is the right match for him. Mentally, physically, I think he's looked better than what he's looked. And I expect it just to be an all-out war from the start, but Dubois seems to get caught too much with easy shots, and you can't get caught like that with AJ, and if he does, I think it's game over.
Michael, you know, you always know when you're over this side of the water, you're always welcome in this studio at London Bridge, mate, with Simon and myself. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Michael Conlan, he terrifically brave fighter, Michael.
Yeah.
I remember that fight he had with Lee Wood, and it looked as if he was going to win it.
Oh, absolutely.
And then Wood came right at the death.
He got dropped heavy, and for him to have come back from that, psychologically and physically was a testament to his character. But he's gone on to lose a couple of fights. They've been recognisable fights. The Jordan Gill fight was a surprise to me, but notwithstanding that, he's a real competitor. Real competitor.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.